Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of UGASports Live. My name is Radi Nabulsi. I will be your host for the next hour or so. I appreciate all of you joining us on a Tuesday afternoon. It means the world to me. I am joined by our fantastic weekly guest, co-host, if you will, Jim Donnan, the former Georgia Bulldogs head coach, the number one reason everybody's tuning in today, the College Hall of Famer, the only man to have led the NCAA, to my knowledge, and passing offense one year and rushing offense in the other. He can call any offense you want, and we're going to ask him a bunch of questions today. So if you've got questions, this is a good week to put them into the comments section on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching the show. Now's your chance to get them in and get them answered by Coach Donnan. And, of course, we also have Dayne Young joining us as well. Dayne, we're going to pepper him with some questions about this new NIL Go, the new House settlement. And it's a new era in college football. I was in Orange Beach last week, saw that the House settlement went through on Friday night, maybe a news drop, and it's big, it's new. It's a lot of people have started tuning out from college recruiting, saying it just doesn't matter anymore. Anybody can show up with a bag of money and change it. Well, that has always been the case, but it was more so the case in the kind of unregulated NIL environment. But now revenue sharing is here. The University of Georgia will have $20.5 million taken out of its budget. This isn't found money, guys. This is money that they had earmarked for other things. They will take $20.5 million out of their budget and start paying athletes. That's not just football players. That is basketball, baseball, gymnastics, everybody. So we have a lot of questions, Coach. I think first and foremost is and we kind of touched on this last week, what is your thoughts on what percentage of that $20.5 million goes to football? Is this the end of some of the other sports out there? Because I can see a lot of people saying, I would rather spend $500,000 on a left tackle than men's golf.
Yeah, I think the way they got it structured, most athletic departments will be like 80% football, 15%, maybe 75, 15% men's basketball, 5% women's basketball, and then whatever's left over, the other sports. But you're right about what's going to happen to the other sports. The one caveat that they've done is to include more scholarships for some of these sports that haven't had quite as many. So that would be a way to maybe generate better teams, but maybe not have the travel budget and the other things involved. So I think it's just a new era, no question about it. And what we're going to have to do is, as sideliners here, analyze it as it goes through. I think coaches, administrators, everybody looking to see not so much about how they're going to disperse these funds, but how they're going to supplement it with the current NIL programs that they have, because there's a ruling that anything over $600 has to be approved by this new firm, Deloitte, whoever that is. I guess I hope they're not a bunch of Florida alums or Alabama alums, but I hope they're neutral. But let's just say we're recruiting Dayne and it wants a deal for $2,000. Well, that has to be approved for name, image, and likeness for him to utilize that firm, let's say Athens Ford or whatever it might be. And so they'll have some kind of checks and balances on it. But the most of the salary part is going to be regulated. That 75% of that 20.5 million will be actual salaries to players in the 85 that they designate to get them.
Dayne, I was looking over the NIL Go, as Coach is talking about, run by Deloitte. Deloitte's a well-known name. They understand marketing. They understand advertising. That's been a agency that's been around a long time. Don't know how they got the contract, but I'm happy for them. I remember reading about them in Advertising Age back in the 1990s. So it's an established firm, and I think they got a good I'm hoping they have a good finger on the pulse of what the valuation is when you have a Jackson Camp 5-star offensive tackle getting $2 million. Is he doing $2 million worth of, ads and is that money legitimate? And so it has to go through them. So if NIL Go is being done by the uh, handling, they're handling that part of it. The schools are paying salaries, like Coach says. What does the NCAA do now? What is their role in all this? Are they basically
I think they pat you on the back and say good luck at this point. We've been saying for years Greg Sankey and the other high-level commissioners are the ones that seemingly run college football these days.
Yeah.
But there's so much about this and there's a thread on the vent today about what would it take for you to stop watching college football, meaning it's changed so radically in the last 5 years that it's just almost a breakneck pace of being recognizable. But I just finished reading, and Coach, you saw this in my car one day the other week. I just finished reading Bruce Feldman's book on Miami and their dynasty. And one of the points it made in there was that when Miami was doing its negotiations to leave, it was the Big East to go to the ACC, that there was a lot of hands in the air of like, this is going to change the sport and make it unrecognizable. Not what we've seen now, but changes in college football have happened since the very beginning of it. And Roddy, do you know how many people watched Georgia, Texas regular season last year?
No.
13 million. Right? So the eyeballs are on the sport. And the reason all the changes are happening is because it's super marketable. And you can sell this for a lot. It's why the players make money. It's why the organizations make money. This is a pro sports thing, and it has been for a long time. There are some aspects to it in terms of like building young athletes to be young adults once their playing days are over that I'm concerned about. But in terms of the health of the sport, I mean, that G on the side of the helmet's one of the most marketable icons in sports. I think that will remain fine.
Yeah, I think, first of all, as far as Miami making that move from the Big East, they haven't won the ACC since they left. Not one. So that's something that didn't work out quite as well, but they're starting to get a little bit better now, particularly since they're investing in these quarterbacks like they are. But getting back to the overall part about the NCAA, they're going to continue to govern these championship events and have all these meetings in these exotic places for all these administrators every year so they can figure out what they're going to do as far as planning. But probably not near as much teeth in their ability to, get people put them on probation or regulate the bylaws as far as breaking rules, because really this is pretty wide open rules now as far as recruiting and the funding involved and all that. So I just don't think you're going to get somebody put on probation for giving a guy a milkshake on an unofficial visit or something like that.
Oh yeah, the famous cream cheese incident. You can give them bagels, but you can't give them cream cheese. And,
so I mean, but as far as being Dayne, that thread about marketable, I mean, the game itself and the games are unbelievable. The what these teams are putting out, but what you're seeing is because of the lack of depth in the different schools. The Big Ten's won the last 2 national championships, and the SEC had an unbelievable run on that. And I just think you're seeing more and more parity across the bigger teams, not so much the lesser teams, but certainly Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, and now Oregon in that league, making a big input as far as the national pulse.
That's a good point, Coach, because you wouldn't. People who are kind of against the playoff expansion, they're like, look, the number 2 team playing the number 15 team. If you go, 16 teams, 1 versus 16, 1's going to destroy 16, 2's going to destroy 15. I'm like, yeah, but when 1 plays 8 and 2 plays 7, it's a different story altogether. So you're right that the top there, a lot more parity, and it comes down to, I think the frustration for a lot of Georgia fans is you feel like you've been 1 or 2 plays away over the last couple of years. and you have been, but that's how thin it is when you don't have that stockpile of depth. It can take 1 or 2 plays, and Michigan gets lucky here, or Ohio State gets lucky there with a play or two that bounces their way, just like when Georgia beat Ohio State. There's 1 or 2 plays. It could have gone either way. So you have that parity at the top, but 1 versus 35. Those lower tier teams are just really not a danger to it. But maybe with this, maybe we see more parity coming across there. And I'm excited about it. I'm with you, Dane. People will complain about the sport's just not the same, but they're tuning in droves. I remember.
What's wrong with it? I mean, seriously, what's wrong with it?
It's frustration, Coach, because I think it comes down to recruiting, and you want to see
the rules are the rules. I mean, you're worried about rat shit when there's elephant turds all around, man. I mean, seriously, we just gotta talk about stuff, but really, you just can't pull your hair out and say, "Well, I wish it's." I mean, it is what it is. Que sera, sera. I mean, I'm trying to be patient. I'm not talking about the fans or anything, but I got other things to talk about and worry about. I got to get a tree limb taken down in my yard, and that's important for me right now. So, but as far as we can't do anything about this, this is the way it is. I mean, Kirby, we got the best, as you've talked about. He's the best roster management guy anywhere, pro, college, anywhere, and he will work it out. So I'm looking forward to this year. I think it's really going to be a fantastic year. It's going to have some ups and downs, but we got a good roster and we got an unbelievable schedule. And but part of the deal is we got to talk about this stuff, and I'm not trying to be smart ankles about it or anything, but it is what it is. We're going to be paying these guys. Everybody on our team is going to be getting a consistent salary, and not as much as some of these administrators are making, but around the country. And I think some of them certainly are deserving of it, but I don't think you need as many of them as certain schools have. They need, is one thing you've seen in the belt tightening around the country in athletic departments. When somebody leaves now, more than likely they're not going to replace that person. They're just trying to give more duties to somebody else. And that's the way that they're trying to make up for the lack of budget for these other sports.
You're also not going to see, call it the arms race, with everybody renewing their buildings constantly and, putting in putting greens and lazy rivers and stuff like this, trying to attract the players to come to your school now. It's like, hey, come here, we're going to pay you. And I'm excited about it because it has been so unregulated and it has been changing every year. And I only say every year, Coach, you've seen where the kids you sign in 2023 in fall, by the end of the year, you're going into 2024, December 2023, January 2024. One season later, every kid on that team wants a raise. By the time you start fall 2024, and you get to January 2025, the recruiting numbers have doubled and tripled. So
it's just American system.
Yeah, I'm nothing against it.
Everybody wants to increase their salary and everything like that. But I want to get back to one thing, which I think would really clarify a lot of this. We had something that was built and developed just because they felt like it was unfair for a guy like whoever it might be to have his jersey sold and not get any money for it.
Let's go to AJ Green because he actually got in trouble for that.
So everybody in the NCAA and around that felt like, okay, we'll put a caveat out there and let them, for name, image, and likeness, get money for it. And that was why the rule was passed. But they didn't really put any parameters on what you could use for that. And then all of a sudden, the people that had the good boosters and the great marketing people and all, they said, look, this is a chance for us to really attract some guys. We can really give them a lot more money than we first thought. And then it became an arms race from that standpoint. And that's where we are today, 3.5, 4 years later, where now they're saying this is the way we got some structure to it. And this structure is based on trying to be fair to everybody, because some people just couldn't raise the money to compete, like the upper echelon people. So now you got a national directive of taking 20.5 million of the money that you've been added to either your TV or conference revenue sharing or whatever it might be, and now disperse that to the athletes. So,
well, that's why I'm excited about it, because now it's like, okay, it's been going all over the place, and people who were soured on recruiting and soured on a player that you like, he's, all of a sudden the transfer portal opens up and he goes somewhere else because another team who's more desperate is paying him a lot more money from some booster or somebody who's technically paying him for name, image, and likeness, which we know is just pay for play. And you get rid of all that and say, okay, everybody's got the same budget. Now let's see recruit on a more fair playing field. Let's see, development comes back into this, and you can get back into, I guess, Coach, what I was saying was the people who get excited about recruiting or the players on a team, you buy a guy's jersey, then he transfers. It just hurts your love of the game. Or
that's true. That's a good point.
And now you're like, hey, this guy's going to stick around. Hell yeah. And so I think with the playoffs.
But the number one reason for transfer is not money. It's playing time.
Yeah. So, very fair.
So we're having a paradox here. Yeah. People will say, well, Joe Blow left because of money. And talking to coaches, including Kirby, the number one reason guys leave now is playing time. And that's why we play so many younger kids early sometimes that maybe aren't ready as compared to the previous years. But, put them in maybe not too strong a role, but get them going there and give them a little encouragement. Hey, we're going to develop you and, hang around here, and you're already second team here, and now we're already playing you. So you got to give them a little love there and get them on the field. So the playing time to me is the number one reason for the portal. That's why I hope that we get one set date, that it's, in January and not this end of this, spring, where a guy can leave twice a year.
Right. I mean, well, Roddy, that's the one side of using money to pull someone into the portal to another school. But if you look at the last two national champions, it's the money being there in college, and now even a more consistent revenue stream, right? Michigan won a national championship because some players stayed that in previous iterations would have gone pro because they were kind of that fringe level, could have gone to the NFL to make money. Ohio State did the same thing last year. They had a lot of older players that returned that would have been on NFL rosters. And so the teams that can do that best, that's how you get more depth than other teams. I think that that's going to be the path to victory for a lot of these. Now, you're not going to keep a first-round pick from going to the NFL and signing that contract. That's not going to happen. But can you keep a third, fourth-round guy that can be a really good player for you? Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, you're 100% right. But that's why I like this House versus NCAA settlement thing is you've almost had three issues. You had the transfer portal popping up twice a year, and then you had NIL. So when in other words, you felt like there was no consistency on your roster. Recruiting didn't matter. You're recruiting your entire team every 6 months, or at every time the portal opened, you had to try to lock them down. Well, at least now that everybody's got the same pool of money or similar pool of money, you get some guardrails on NIL. So that takes that one out of the equation. Now the next step in getting our college football car back on the highway to come out of this kind of tailspin is to, like Coach says, get the transfer portal down to one section so that if you're losing a kid to playing time, it's like, look, I get it. We don't really begrudge guys who go back closer back to home. Think of AD, going back. Okay, fine. That we don't worry about that. But a kid who left because of money, we resent that. But a kid who leaves for playing time, we don't worry about that as much. People weren't really mad at Jermaine Johnson. They weren't happy about it, but he goes to FSU, plays well, gets drafted high. Hey, water under the bridge, there's no hatred there. But a guy who leaves because of money, you get angry about it, and it sours you on the sport. So I like the fact that we're hopefully getting rid of one of these sections, but now, okay, the NIL issue's taken care of. Let's go transfer portal. Let's get that fixed.
But I'm going to be Mr. on the other side of one thing. I don't think the NIL is taken care of.
Oh, it's
what's going to
baby
happen?
steps.
What's going to happen is the haves are going to have to work out how they're going to supplement these big people that they've had, and where they're going to get the money to use and use that Deloitte will approve, because you're going to, some of these guys aren't going to want to take what the revenue sharing is.
Oh yeah,
I mean, they're making too much money as is. I mean, do you think Carson Beck? Hey, he's down there in Miami. He's saying, "Well, hey Carson, we got a good revenue plan for you. Here's $200,000," and he's been promised $3 to $4 million. So you're going to have to keep that up some way. They're not going to take $4 million out of that revenue sharing and pay him with that.
Oh no, I agree, and
that's not being argumentative with you.
No.
I'm just saying y'all both have made some really good points. But my deal here as an old coach that's watched this and studied and asked a lot of questions here in the last week or so of different administrators around the country to try to be as good as I can on this show, is the two parts that are concerning everybody is how we're going to make up for the amount of money that these other sports are losing, because we're going to have to give 80% of this money to football, and how are we going to continue our NIL within the rules of this new context of $600, over $600 going to have to be approved. So
the bagman's coming back, Coach.
Yeah, let's just point out this part. Most of these guys have been getting NIL everywhere, haven't been doing anything except playing football. I mean, that's what they're doing, but they're not getting – somebody's not giving them this money and saying, I want you to represent us, blah, blah, blah. The average salary for most teams was made up from donations and donors and all that, and kids were given salaries or contracts like they are getting ready to on this other thing. So I hope I'm explaining that right, that money now for those basic contracts is going to come from the school, but after that, anything supplemental, how are you going to work that out? I mean, there's going to be some rule breaking on that. Now, I'm just telling you.
That's what I just
you're not going to. If it comes down to keeping a good player and Deloitte says, hey, you can't do this, you think they're not going to do it some other way? They're going to do it. I mean,
it's the bagman, Coach. I'm telling you, the bagman is coming back.
You get back to when again, Dayne made a good point about these kids coming back. And, we had Chubb and those guys come back Kirby's second year and we won. I don't know to what extent they really were believing in the program. But part of the deal for a lot of success that Alabama had over the years during Nick's run was they had an inordinate amount of guys come back for their senior year. I'm talking about Najee Harris, guys that just really good players that could have been drafted early. But I will point out this other thing, and Carson Beck's making about 3 times as much money as Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
Stetson Bennett's a 4th-round draft choice, and he's doing a good job up there. He had a little issue his first year, but his salary is about $900,000. And Dylan Gabriel last year, he came and transferred from Oklahoma to Oregon, made a ton of money. He's not making as much with the Cleveland Browns as he was making in Oregon. So, and Carson Beck, who knows where he's going to be drafted, but if he's not the number in the top 10 drafts picks, he's not going to make as much as he did this year.
Yeah, it'll be a pay cut. So I'm with you. And I think that is a market correction that we're going to have to see go down. And a lot of people are trying to get these deals approved now. We're seeing a lot of commitments going down. People trying to get ahead of this thing, front-loaded contracts through the NIL thing, trying to get ahead of NIL go. saying, look, give me my money now, even though I'm still in high school, I'm committed to you. You're right. It's got a lot of it's got to work out, but the teams that are desperate, the teams that want to win, are still going to go out and say, hey, come to this school. I've got a NIL deal for you. You're going to have to do some commercials. You're going to have to do some work on your end, but you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. It's not going away. I'm just excited that at least we have a start, because it just felt like the NCAA lost every.
It is if you're at a school like Georgia Tech or somebody like that, but a school like Georgia, I don't know. I mean, you look at some of these schools' budgets, what they're spending for NIL. They're not going to. There's no way Texas is going to be less now. There's no way Ohio State, Georgia, we're going to have to. We want to be in the top 10. We're going to have to keep going, man. That's it.
Well, here's an idea for you, Coach. There's so much money in college with NIL and everything. When the players are done in the NFL and kind of coming back down, you let them come back to college again. So like a Chris Conley retires from the NFL, he wants to come back to Georgia for another run, he gets it.
Well, you never know if a guy's good enough to come back at this point. I'm sure Chris was a tremendous athlete, but that's probably not going to happen, Dayne. But
hey, I never thought any of this would happen. So I think all the ideas are up for play as long as someone's willing to go for it.
You know, they were talking about the 5th and 6th year for these guys because of COVID and all that. But I just can't blame a marginal player that it's so hard to make the pro team. You can't blame him for trying to get what they can now to stay in college and play another year. If that means going to another school or whatever it might be, it's because you can set yourself up and set your family up. I mean, it's hard for me to get mad at that.
Oh, I don't think anybody's mad at it. I think it's just it felt like there were no guardrails. It felt like there was, and every month or every 6 months, it felt like the whole market reset, and it frustrated people who were excited about players, excited about recruits. And we have people every day say, I don't pay attention to recruiting anymore because at the last second, somebody's going to come in with a bag.
Right.
Well, that's been going on since Coach was 18 years old.
We've lost a lot of guys the last day, but exactly. It's not like when it gets down to the last thing, when the guy's putting on the hat and everything, it's because he's worked with his agent and everything is, everything's pretty well set. So,
well, I think that's why Kirby's been so consistent. Just tell me the rules, because eventually we're going to have a roster of players, and September's going to come and Georgia's going to be on a football field versus Marshall. And Kirby's job is to have whatever players those are ready for that football game.
Exactly, but he's playing a team that's got 60 new players that were not on their team last year because their coach left and they got a complete roster changeover. So, but we're supposed to be ready for them. But we will be, but what, we don't know a lot about these players. They haven't played. So it's a different game. But I will say that the evolution, if you just go back and look at Kirby's MO early on, we were making sure his loyalty to his present squad cost him and us some players, because he wasn't going to pay somebody more than somebody on his team just to get him at Georgia. But as the process developed, he realized that we were going to have to be more, show more initiative, ability to raise money, whatever it might be, and front end some of these players if we were going to get them. Because you can't worry about your team if this year, if in a couple of years you're not going to be very good because you didn't get anybody recruiting wise to make up for that. So he's kind of changed on that. And our players have recognized the fact that you came along a little bit too early to get the big money early, but now maybe you can get it later in your career. And the other guys are just saying, hey, I'm glad I was coming up at this time before this revenue sharing came along.
Well, I'm excited about the future of this, and it's a good start there. I'm with you. If you set the rules out there, like you were just saying, if you give Kirby the rules, his instincts to not blow his team up in the locker room by throwing crazy money out and hurting a guy like Cedric Van Pran. Hey, we're giving you $10,000, but this new center we signed, he's getting $1 million. Kirby didn't do that. He's got the right instincts. He's dialed in with his team, and give him the rules. Give him the not even the rules, just the parameters, and he's going to come out on top. Speaking of coming out on,
I'm going to give you a great example, and then you talk about Athens Ford here because I want you to. The fact that we were able to get Mika Fitzpatrick's brother is a tremendous testimony to the way that he felt about Kirby Smart as a coach. The fact that he had all these ties to Alabama and all these things, and he's a great player and all. But, hey, this is my brother. I want to get him developed. This is the best guy to do it, and I want him to go there. I mean, that to me is if you're a Georgia fan, that's got to make you feel pretty good there because we know what kind of player Minka was, and I hope this brother is going to be even close to him. But you're going to see more and more of that as some of these legacy guys start to come up. You're going to see a lot of that coming along in the next few years because they want them to play for Kirby. That's just the way it is. And I love that. I love that feeling that they have for him.
Justice Fitzpatrick. And I want to take a victory lap and say, said that Georgia was going to get justice. It was just the wrong position, the wrong state, the wrong year. But they finally landed a justice. Get coach for that one. All right, real quick, I mentioned our friends at Athens Ford. There's a fantastic thing they did recently. They were named the 2024 let's go the president. I'm trying to remember President's Award in 2024. So back on May 23rd, they were given the President's Award from Ford. This is Ford's highest honor for exceptional customer satisfaction and performance. In other words, the customer satisfaction for people going to Athens Ford was so high, they actually achieved Ford's highest honor. So the Ford company came and presented it to our friends at Athens Ford. That is a big deal. And they just celebrated their 13th year in Athens. I think in 5 or 6 of those years, they've been a sponsor of this site. So they've been sponsoring us for a long time. And I'm sure that's what made them successful. But what really made them successful is the fact that so many people give them 5-star reviews and so many people recommend them to their friends. So shout out to Brian Clower and the folks at Athens Ford for winning the President's Award for 2024. And it takes them a while to process all that. So that's why they just got it now. So shout out to them. It's a huge deal. And I'm proud to call them friends. And I'm proud to call them a sponsor of our show because, hey, real knows real. Also want to mention our friends over at myperfectfranchise.net. There is a new monthly quiz on the front page of UGASports.com. They do this every month. They give away a free 1-year membership. It's a $100 membership. So basically, they give you some parameters of what the franchise of the month is. You go in and you guess it. If you guess it right, you're the first one to guess it right, then they give you a year membership. You can either add it to yours or give it to somebody else. They pay it. They pay for it. It's not just something that we give them. They come out and say, look, we're willing to give away a free membership to UGASports.com every month if you just guess what the new franchise are. And they're always really wild and varied. And it's brilliant marketing because it teaches you about franchises you didn't even know existed. So even if you're not willing to guess, go ahead and click on those when you're at UGASports.com to find out what the different franchises out there are. When I say there's 3,000 different franchises, and I know that washes over some people's heads. And they're like, oh, that's just a lot. 3,000 different ones. That's a lot of different companies and a lot of different industries that you can check out. So when you get a chance, check out with our friends at myperfectfranchise.net. You'll be very glad you did so.
Let's get to some questions from UGAsports.com. Roddy, we'll start with one for you. Bulldog Ben says, if a recruit who is not on campus signs a contract with guaranteed money and is getting paid while in high school, does the new agreement trumped that contract. In other words, if USC told Mark Bowman that he will get $2 million a year, but now they only have around $13 million for the entire team, are we going to see jumping ship or lawsuits? And I think that's a bit of what Coach was getting at. You're going to have a settlement. You're going to have money on top of that, too.
Well, it depends on where the $2 million is coming from. If it's coming from let's say a USC alum who has a business, knows that Mark Bowman is going to be the face of that franchise, which he is. I mean, he is the closest thing to Brock Bowers I've seen in a long time. And I'm not just throwing it out there because Brock was so good. Mark Bowman he's considered to be one of the top tight end prospects. I mean, he'll make a bigger splash off the bat because Brock was kind of a surprise to everybody, especially with all the stuff that's going on with COVID. But Mark Bowman's a big deal. But let's say he's getting $2 million from USC. That's $2 million isn't coming from their split, that 20.5. He's probably getting a small percentage of that. The rest of it is coming through somebody's paying that in NIL. Where did that money come from? And now NIL Go will have to say, is he doing enough? Deloitte, is he doing $2 million worth of name, image, and likeness material for that money? So, but to his point, to the question, a lot of these are going to get looked at very hard, and a lot of them are going to have to be justified. Some people are trying to get them, say, hey, look, we signed this before July 1st, so therefore it's not subject to NIL Go, and that is still going to be litigated. So,
yeah, I was glad to see the other thing that they grandfathered in the walk-ons that have been part of the program, and just not say, look, you can't have but 105 and anybody else has got to leave, because those kids would have a hard time going someplace else, because the same problem with the other teams. Everybody's losing walk-ons, and you got to keep your squad down to 105, so there wouldn't be a lot of places for them to go. Right. So anybody that's been on Georgia's roster up to this date can stay here and not necessarily be counted in the 105. So I would say the 20 extra players will be probably new recruits this year that Kirby brings in that are, what they call selected walk-ons or priority walk-ons, and then the grandfather, the people that have been here in the past that they want to keep on the team.
Another question from, are you reading this comment, Radi?
Yeah, I like this from Brodo Baggins, because I was bouncing around trying to put my words together. I couldn't do it, but Brodo Baggins did it. He said, this new settlement could be one of the best things to happen to the Dogs in this era of NIL. Kirby is a proven recruiter of NFL talent. Now that there is a quote-unquote cap, I think more talent will pick UGA. And that's basically what I was trying to say. Brodo Baggins said it better.
Yeah, that definitely said well, but it's not a cap. Yeah. I mean,
let's call it a start. There's a start there.
There's a cap for the have-nots.
Yeah.
But, some of these schools, and you just don't know how much a marginal school is going to use that. If they'll say, look, we can't take 20.5 and use it for players, they won't be able to do that.
That's true.
But I did see that one investment firm has got something coming out where they got a $500 million budget that they're going to loan money to these Power 4 schools that need money for facility enhancement that they can't get, and then, structure it where they pay them interest on it. So try to keep them – it's a pretty good idea. Try to keep them afloat with this, extra money that they would have to maybe loan these schools that don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so few schools that actually make money, or so few athletic programs that do. You're right, that comes out. A lot of teams won't be able to deal with the fact that 20.5 taken right out of their budget is now they're like really behind the 8 ball. I think it's not much a cap as a base salary. Maybe that makes it, and maybe the cap of NIL Go saying this has to be legitimate NIL. This can't just be giant fat checks.
It is, but still, you got that factor out on top of that we got to get this kid. But I think another thing in that's going to be prevalent is schools that really have made money that have reserves that they've utilized to keep in case of rainy day fund. Probably going to start using that maybe a little more to help these other sports, because you don't want to lose something and have all this money in the bank and let a program dwindle or just go off in the sunset.
Other question from Bulldog Ben. Coach, where do you think Gunnar Stockton ranks among SEC quarterbacks? It seems like our season will go how he goes. Bulldog Ben, I'll tell you, last week, Coach talked about every quarterback in the SEC. So if you want a detailed analysis, go to that.
Yeah. Hey, Ben, you always have some good questions, but hate you missed last week because I poured my guts out on that. I'm high on Gunnar. I think the supporting cast is going to be there to help him. The defense is going to be good enough to help him. So he's not a high pro draft choice at this point, but he is a guy that I feel very comfortable, kind of identifies with the head coach from the standpoint. The head coach has a philosophy. He knows that. He can carry that out. He's got a tight relationship with the play caller and Coach Bobo, and he can administer the scheme that we want to do and orchestrate it very mentally, which is part of it. And then physically, he's gifted enough to get out of trouble maybe that some of our quarterbacks hadn't been able to do, and maybe give us some more first downs just with his feet. So I think Gunnar's going to be very much like Jake Fromm here. I think he'll be an excellent quarterback.
I remember when so many times we have a watch-along show with Coach Donnan, and the quarterback hands the ball off, bootlegs out, and the backside defensive end, outside linebacker, whoever crashes in on the backside, and Coach just loses his mind. He's like, just keep it one time. There's nobody over there. If you just keep it, you're going to walk into the end zone. And some teams just don't respect a certain quarterback as a threat to run, even though he's making all the moves as if he could keep it. The fact that he never does, the teams just don't respect it. And I think the fact that when they look at Gunnar, they're going to be like, hey, this cat might keep it a couple of times. So you stay home, and all of a sudden you get a little bit and then Coach doesn't have to yell at the TV as much.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of a pet peeve for me. Why have the play if you're not going to read it? I mean, but that doesn't necessarily mean us. But some people have gotten into what they call the wraparound part of that now, and where they'll bring a tight end on around to block for that guy if the end is there.
Yeah, and
that helps a guy that's maybe not that great a runner. Even the pros are doing that some to try to get first downs, but they don't want to expose that quarterback to getting hit by that end, so they got somebody bringing him around. But the reason you want to be able to do that is that they've got an extra guy on the backside, particularly the way these outside backers can run. They can chase down a lot of plays and eliminate the cutback just by squeezing down the line of scrimmage and chasing it and not worrying about, their responsibility on the backside. And
that's why I'm like, hey, just having Gunnar back there, we saw it at Texas. They're like, hey, this kid's that's something to watch out for. So
he can run the quarterback draw too against man coverage. We've talked about that's the best play you got because nobody's assigned to the quarterback. I never will forget. I'm just got to tell one story about man coverage. When I was in college, we had a defensive coordinator that ran the defense, and the head coach really stayed away from the defense. He had a lot of respect for the guy. But one spring, he came up with the idea that he wanted – the guy's name was Coach Michaels. He wanted Mike to run this defense one day in spring practice where every man on the defense had a man. It was like man to man, but nobody was assigned to the quarterback. But it was just something that Earl did that really was so stupid. He can't even believe it. But Michaels would, and he always used to say, holy balls, holy balls. We'll do it, Earl. So the first play that they did it out there, the quarterback missed the handoff. And it wasn't on purpose, but he just missed it. You know what I mean? And so he's standing there with the ball. So he just runs around the backside end. And, of course, nobody's assigned to the quarterback. And the guy runs 70 yards. And everybody on our team was laughing their ass off because Earl's defense went down the drain on one play. So much for that. Nobody's interested in that, but that was a real funny deal for me.
Hydrant Chaser wants to know, what's your favorite chicken wings in Athens?
Hey, there's so many of them I can't even add to you, but I tell you, my favorite kind is lemon yaki. I like teriyaki and lemon pepper together, and the Locos has them and some others, and there's also some honey lemon yaki, which is really sweet, but I'm not quite as big on those. But we got some good wing places. We got some wing places are minor league, though. I mean, especially the size of the wings. But when you're an old coach and you're by yourself, unless I go with you guys once a month, I'm pretty big on making sure I go to the right place. So I don't want to let anybody down, but there's a lot of good ones around here.
Hey, Coach, when this is over, I'm going to have DoorDash drop you off 24 lemon yaki wings from Locos.
Well, that'd be nice. I wouldn't expect it, but I wasn't asking for that.
I actually, when the show was over, I was going to ask if I could send you some food. Now you got me excited about lemon yaki wings. I've had them with Coach. He converted me.
The guy asked the guy at the hot dog place one time, said, "You want it all the way?" He said, "No, I'll just eat it here."
From Get Up Kid for UGA, Coach, while Kirby usually waits a year or two to work out most of the youngsters in the game, I feel like there are a couple of true freshmen each year that make an impact. Bowers in 21, Starks in 22, KJ Bolden, and Nate Frazier last year. Who were the possible guys this year to contribute early for Georgia among the freshmen?
I think we got some receivers that can come out there pretty quickly. You know, Wiley and Taylor, both good players, and then we got some good transfers that are going to help at that position too. You know, I'm not sure that we have anybody that steps out there quite as much as maybe one of those people he mentioned, but we definitely got some really good athletes there in that freshman class. But anybody you think of there, Roddy or Dayne?
I cheated, Coach. I pulled up the commitment list because I'm like, well, I was trying to remember I was thinking defensive lineman because that to me is my biggest issue.
Oh yeah, you're the big kid from Savannah might be.
Yeah, Elijah Griffin, Isaiah Gibson out of Warner Robins. But I couldn't remember all the defensive linemen they got because they took a bunch of them. So I was pulling them up and thinking of.
Yeah, I would say Griffin would be somebody everybody will figure out pretty quick.
Yeah, but that Darren, I can never say it. The defensive mid, the 6'5" kid from Hillside, New Jersey, was the other one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
And then that J.J. Haney out of Rancho Santa Margarita.
Well, Coach, in theory, if depth is as limited as it has been and will continue to be, shouldn't it be a little easier for some freshmen to break through and get playing time?
Right. And getting back to what I said earlier, they're going to give them a benefit of the doubt and play them earlier just to make sure they know that they got a plan for them. You know what I'm saying? So, but the way we practice helps encompass that because we spend time with the freshmen and the third team guys during regular practice. Usually you're just working on the scout team and getting ready for the game and all that. But we spend 8 to 12 plays a day letting the threes go out there with all the coaches looking at them. And that's how a guy like Jordan Davis, even though he was a humongous guy, they saw what he could do in that 3 versus 3 stuff. And before you knew it, he was playing at the end of the year.
This from FPREX. Which former Georgia defensive line group would you compare the 2025 defensive line before the Pats come on this summer? Hard to compare groups like that year over year, Coach.
I wish it was 2021. But boy, that was a group, wasn't it? Come on, unbelievable. But 2000 defensive line was pretty good too. I think the overall defensive composite group as a whole, to me, gives you the forcing unit with the linebackers and the secondary's ability to tackle, and the inexperience in the outside defensive end type group is there, but there's certainly some bodies in there that can step in, particularly this kid from Army that I'm hearing a lot of raves about. That guys, I talked about how large his wingspan was, but he's got a motor that runs, and he's been in that Army discipline type deal that, work around here is nothing to him. I mean, he's really stepped it up, and little Birdie has told me this guy is a real deal out there working with our kids. So, but the group as a whole, the 11 has to have its own strength by each unit pulling together, So I think the fact that we're not going to have any lack of strength at the point of attack, the fact that our forcing unit with the backers is going to be really good, and our secondary should be able to cover better as a whole, even though we did lose a really good safety there, and a couple other guys. But I'm high on our defense as a whole.
Coach, where does lack of depth hurt the most? I've been told it's really hard to find defensive linemen that can make a difference. And I've been told you really can't find a great left tackle. I mean, there's just one or two every year.
I would say certainly quarterback, because you're on one play away from your whole season going down the tubes. You got to have at least an adequate backup there. And left tackle would be the next position because, I've said before, lost the national championship at Marshall when our left tackle got hurt week of practice, and then lost another one when the center got disqualified for smoking marijuana, and we couldn't run the shotgun that week. So, I mean, the other center, who's now a really prominent judge up in Ohio, I'm proud of him. I wish he'd learn how to snap the dang shotgun snap. But the point is, you can point out each position relatively, but very vivid. A left tackle or a quarterback or a corner, it's not going to take them long to figure out that a corner can't cover or can't play. You're going to go on that pretty quick. You can disguise your coverages and play things to cover them up a little bit. But and if you don't have really good D-line, doesn't make any difference how good your forcing unit is on the back end. They're going to mash you at the point of attack and get the ball 4 or 5 yards before those other guys can do anything.
I like this question from Brodo again. Coach, would you rather have a elite D-line and an above-average O-line, or an elite O-line and above-average D-line? So one's going to be elite and one's going to be above average. Where do you want them to fall?
Well, if my O-line is above average and I've got really good players around them, I'd rather have an elite D-line because you can dominate the game, because you could go into an offense as an elite offensive line and go against an elite defensive line, and you maybe not do that great. So I like those big old boys up there that can dominate the point of attack on defense.
Question from UJ1195. Which is tougher to navigate, Georgia's schedule this season or breaking in a quarterback that hasn't played a whole lot in games?
I think the schedule. I mean, the guy's ready to go. I mean, he's played enough practice snaps against a great defense that, he's had a lot of challenging moments here. So, but our schedule to me is a lot more challenging than the quarterback being brought along, particularly the fact you got 2 games that get his feet under him, a little bit. Not to say that those are lay down games, but it should be ones where we can establish ourselves. But I think their schedule is daunting, no question about it. I mean, we've got these teams at home, but, pretty soon we're going to be playing Tennessee, Alabama, and Kentucky in a row right there. I mean, pretty quick.
That's it from UGASports.com. Questions? I have a couple minutes more, Roddy, if I want to sneak a few more in here.
And one from James Caraway says, how do you quantify the value of a QB who the other players see take a fire under his butt from the coaches, unlike Beck? I love his intangible.
Say that again now.
I was a little confused on what James is asking, but I think how do you quantify the value of a quarterback who basically has that fires up the other players around him?
Well, you want to be the guy that everybody believes in. I always, talk about if the players believe in it, doesn't make any difference what the play's called. They're going to work it out as good as they can. But if there's any doubt or question, it's going to be hard to follow somebody. But I never felt like that was an issue with Carson. I just felt like he wasn't an outgoing presence around everybody else publicly. But you can't go through an undefeated season like he did and do what he did in the 2023 without having the players behind you. That's for sure.
Yeah, I always liked that. I'm really kind of proprietary of the Stetson Bennett story because I felt like, we reported him coming on as a walk-on, him leaving. We broke the news of him coming back and being really good. And you go back to that when they played Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl, asking Mel Tucker about, who's your scout team quarterback. And he's like, oh, that's Stetson Bennett kid. He's a monster. And knowing that the team, even though they had Fromm and Eason and all these guys, the team respected the hell out of him. And to see him later on, 4 and 5 years later, win a couple titles, knowing that they believed in their guy and it showed up on day one. That's kind of the vibe. I know it doesn't matter or people can't get excited about that, but I'm like, look, the way they talk about Gunnar Stockton, this team believes in this kid.
Yeah, I mean, just listen to the comments at halftime when everybody found out that he was going to have to come in. Everybody's behind him because they'd seen what he'd done in practice. And, we go back to we talk about that thing with Stetson, but, I was out there when they were preliminary looking at the team before they went to the Rose Bowl, and Herb Street and Fowler were here. And I said, come on down here to this other end. I want you to watch this quarterback emulating Baker Mayfield. He looks like Baker. And that was Stetson. And Herb Street remembered that when he started talking about Stetson later on. But the point about Stetson was just an unbelievable belief in himself and not so much a chip on his shoulder, but just that he was going to make the play that you had to make. And he was just enough of a maverick that he could improvise within the system that we had enough to make things just make plays that are just highlight reels. But, I mean, come on, you got 2 national championships under your belt as a guy that a lot of people didn't want him to play here. So I remember people talking about that pop gun arm.
All right, and folks, with that, we're going to wrap up this week's show. We appreciate everybody joining us. We will be back next Tuesday to talk a lot more Georgia football, and maybe the recruiting has been off the charts. Shout out to Zachary Lewis, the interior offensive lineman who committed to Georgia yesterday from North Gwinnett. And, as Coach pointed out, Justice Fitzpatrick committed, I think it was last Tuesday. So in less than a week, the Bulldogs have added 2 guys. They've got another. They just hosted 20-something kids for official visits this past weekend. So there's a lot going on in the recruiting. Check out UGASports.com.
Yeah, another point I'd like to point out, one of the guys that played for me, Anthony Lunnan, his son's over here at Clark Central, and Georgia offered him last week. And I'm excited for the Lunnan family, and hopefully he's going to come here. I would think he would. But, again, another legacy guy that played with Kirby, and real proud of Anthony, all he's done for the community, and just a real good dog just as a good person.
Hopefully that's another defensive lineman, defensive end that the Bulldogs can pull in. Fingers crossed for that one. But always check out with Jed and Trent and Lance and the folks over at UGASports.com on the Vault for all the recruiting updates. Ton of stuff going that you need to check out. And with that, we will see you next week. Take care.